Many Jews today feel the need for a Jewish renaissance. People are searching for a more vital and authentic mode of Jewish expression, and more than ever we need to shift not only physically but spiritually out of exile mode. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Must one sleep in the Sukah?
The Mishnah in the second perek of Masechet Sukah, Daf Kaf He Amud Aleph, states, "Ochalim u'shothim aray chutz la-Sukah." One may eat a snack or drink something outside of the Sukah, but a main meal one has to eat in the Sukah. It goes on to say on Daf Kaf He Amud Aleph, "Tana Rabbanan ochalim achilat aray chutz la-Sukah ve'en yeshenim shenat aray chutz la-Sukah." One may eat a small amount of snack outside of the Sukah, but one may not have a whole meal, a serious meal, outside of the Sukah. And as for sleeping, one may not sleep even a shenath ara, even a nap. One may not take a nap outside the Sukah. And this is what we find in all the posukim, all the sources. We find, for example, in Sudur of Saadia Gaon, he writes, "V'hayavim le'echol v'lishtot v'likro v'linmod v'lishon b'Sukah." One is required to eat and drink and study, learn Torah, and to sleep in the Sukkah. En osim shum davar me'ele mihutz la. One does none of these things outside of the Sukkah. So says Rav Saadia Gaon. And the Rambam also says something very similar, quoting Chazal as always. The Rambam says in Perek Shishi V'ilchot Sukah Halacha Hey, "Kesad hi miswat ha'yeshiva b'Sukkah." How does one perform this miswah? Sheyeh ochel v'shoteh v'dar b'Sukkah. One eats and drinks and lives and dwells in the Sukkah for 7 days. Ben bayom, ben balayla, during the night, during the day. Of course, at night one normally sleeps. So the Rambam is already telling you that you sleep in a Sukkah, just as one does in one's home. As one does during the year in one's home. The Rambam continues in Halacha, and says, one eats, drinks, sleeps in the Sukkah all 7 days. So we see there is no question, no doubt whatever, that one is required to dwell in the fullest sense of the term in the Sukkah for 7 days to the utmost of one's ability. This, of course, does not mean to say that if the weather is terribly cold or it rains or what have you, such circumstances make it impossible to perform the mitzvah of Sukkah, and one leaves the Sukkah and enters one's home. But where this is not the case, one is to be in the Sukkah and to sleep in the Sukkah.
Isn't it true that the Habad movement explicitly educates people that they should not sleep in the Sukkah?
Yes, it is true that in Habad circles, their practice is not to sleep in the Sukkah. And they will tell you this is not to do with the weather, not because they are mitzta'er, they are suffering and uncomfortable in the Sukkah, but due to weather or similar reasons. Their reasoning is something quite different. One of their leaders, several generations ago, came up with the notion that it cannot be simply that we are not living in the Sukkah, we are not sleeping, that is to say, in the Sukkah, as the Halacha requires, simply because the weather doesn't permit. Because, of course, Lubavitch, Habad, coming from White Russia, it comes from a climate which is very inclement, makes it very difficult, if not totally impossible, to sleep in the Sukkah or to spend any significant time in the Sukkah, except for perhaps eating here and there where possible, as we have mentioned in another video. So all Jews were living in this reality in many parts of the world, and certainly in Europe, in that part of the world, in Russia and Eastern Europe, and other parts of Europe, where the weather did not allow one to live in the Sukkah fully and to sleep in the Sukkah. But this particular leader of the Habad movement was unsatisfied with this very down-to-earth and entirely accurate reason as to why they were not sleeping in the Sukkah. And he came up with a different explanation, which has to do with a Kabbalistic interpretation of the special type of holiness with which the Sukkah is imbued during the days of Sukkot. And as a result of this, it is not proper that a person sleeps in the Sukkah. One cannot sleep when one is not fully in control of one's bodily functions, etc. One cannot sleep in the Sukkah when surrounded by such an elevated state of holiness, of Kedusha. And this explanation, as opposed to the down-to-earth and standard explanation based on the objective realities of the weather, etc., this explanation was much more pleasing to him in his eyes, and this became the standard approach in Habad circles, that we do not sleep in the Sukah because it is too holy and we are not able to sleep in such a reality of holiness. It goes without saying that this is a terrible error and an affront to anyone with any understanding and appreciation of the Torah given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu and passed down to us from generation to generation. As we have mentioned, as we have quoted at length, Hazal and all the Rishonim, all the Kadmonim, all the early authorities, all those who did not live in such climates, make it very clear that we are to live, dwell, sleep in a sukkah for 7 days and nights, unless the weather truly makes this impossible, such as when it rains, which can happen also in Eretz Yisrael, one must admit, but this is not very often the case. Baruch Hashem, and we usually are able to sleep throughout the Chag in the sukkah. To claim that we, based on certain speculative, Kabbalistic understandings, interpretations, and notions, that we change the halakha and we actually nullify this miswah, which is a miswah of the Torah, to dwell in the sukkah wherever possible, as much as possible, this is a totally unacceptable and, in fact, outrageous approach and way of understanding the Torah and implementing the Torah. I recall very well many years ago that Harav Shach Zitzal, speaking in Yad Eliyahu in Tel Aviv, specifically took issue in a very vehement way with this practice of Habad, of not sleeping in the Sukkah. He went as far as to say that those who do not do so, who claim that one should not sleep in the Sukkah, are apikosim, because they are disagreeing with the Mishnah, with the Talmud, with the explicit statements of the Mishnah and the Talmud, and one finds it very difficult to disagree with this assessment of Rav Shach. So this view, this position, is to be rejected out of hand. It is not possible. It is totally prohibited and entirely misguided to imagine that the Torah is to be understood and interpreted halakha lema'aseh, that we decide on our practical application of the Torah and our halachic practice based on such Kabbalistic understandings and speculations. This is entirely incorrect and is in fact a very serious assault on the integrity of the Torah. The correct approach is to understand that the Torah and the way to perform and live the Torah is to understand and to follow diligently the words of the sages, of the Chachamim, in the Torah She'Ba'al Peh, in the Mishnah, and the Talmud, etc. And any other level of understanding or interpretation is an additional level which comes on top of the basic foundation of the Torah, but it cannot come in place of that foundation, and it certainly cannot overturn the entire edifice.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.